All right, let's go ahead and get started. So tonight we're going to be talking about Winlink and particularly getting started with Winlink. And this is the first real instance of our 2024 Advanced Topics program, which we're doing a little differently this year. We want to spend a few sessions learning something and making it work and then experimenting with it and testing it out and making sure we can actually make it go. So this month, we're doing an introduction to Winlink. We're going to try to get people Winlink accounts set up if you don't already have one. To get Winlink software installed on your computer if you brought it with you. And we'll see how far we can get with that. Yes, Al.
Also on Android devices.
Android as well. I have solutions for Windows, Linux, Mac, and Android. The Android solution is a little crufty, but it does work. So we'll see where we can get with that. Next month, we will be trying to make it work on radios. So bring your computers or devices and your radios next month, and we'll play around with that and see how far we get. That's going to be more of a workshop than a presentation because we will just be experimenting and doing stuff. And I will be counting on the people who already know what to do to help out with that. So those of you who already know what to do, please come. But let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. So getting started with Winlink. How many people have used Winlink before? A few people. Okay. So we have talked about Winlink before. We had a class on Winlink back in 2021, our Winlink overview in our basic topics class, and we did some demos and we played around with it a little bit and talked about it. We've also participated in some other clubs Winlink activities. We had an intro class from the Crossroads Club back in 2020 that was at some library up in Salt Lake. I don't remember which one. And then just last summer, we did a Winlink workshop with several other clubs, and we had quite a bit of participation with that. We had people from Mark, we had people from Sandy, people from Draper, Crossroads, Taylorsville, and I don't remember who else, but there were at least a couple of other clubs that were represented. So that was a great event, and we did get a lot of people working on Winlink for that event. So it was pretty fun. So what's different or new tonight? Why is tonight not just something we've already done? Well, tonight we're going to talk about Winlink and talk about what it is and how it works. We're going to install Winlink on your computer if you brought a computer. We're going to go over how to get a Winlink account and get people signed up if they aren't already signed up. And we're going to plan for next month's activity, and we're going to talk about Mark's future plans for Winlink. All right. So let's dive right in. So what is Winlink? Winlink is basically email for ham radio. So normally, if you have an email account, it works great. You can send messages anywhere in the world. They get there like that. It's fabulous, right? Email is so much better than what we used to call snail mail or the US Postal Service. Not that the Postal Service isn't amazing. What they do for, how much is a stamp these days? 63 cents or something like that? 68. What they can do for 68 cents is still pretty darn amazing. But it's not going to get there in seconds like it will with email. And email is great as long as your internet is working. So Winlink actually will do reliable message passing like email without the internet. You don't need the internet to make it work. And we're going to talk about some different things. Now, it does work with the internet, but it does not require the internet to do anything. Okay. And we'll talk about the differences there. Winlink supports fillable forms. So if you are working an event and you have ICS forms you need to fill out, or you're doing what's the weather watch thing? Skywarn. If you're doing Skywarn and there's a weather event that you want to send a notification about, and there's a particular form you need to fill out for that, those forms are supported by Winlink, and we'll go over that as we get to that point. It also is global, right? I mean, Winlink has the ability to deliver mail around the world. The original system, when it was built, was mainly used by sailing ships or boats, like people with a sailboat, and they needed to be able to communicate reliably and get weather reports and stuff like that. And that's why the system was originally created. Now, it was created by amateur radio operators, and it has the ability to work on amateur radio frequencies, but it also has the ability to work on commercial frequencies and things like that too. So we won't worry about those parts of the system in this presentation. We're only going to be talking about the amateur radio stuff. But if you go to the winlink.org website, and the link is there, you will see their tagline, Winlink Global Radio Email, a network of amateur radio and authorized government licensed stations that provides worldwide radio email using radio pathways where the internet is not present. So in our desire to be prepared for an emergency situation, this is a fabulous tool to have in our utility belt, as we all pretend to be Batman with all of our radios and stuff strapped on. We want to have this tool available. So how does it work? Winlink is a tiered system. So there are three basic tiers. The client tier is the client application that you're going to be running on your local computer or device, whatever it may be. That will make connections to either through the internet to the CMS, which is the central message system, or an RMS, which is a RF message system. An RMS gateway is another system that is out there that you can reach via RF that has an internet connection to get to the CMS. Okay, this is what we call the conventional mode. And here's a diagram of how this works, right? So in the conventional mode, the messages live on the CMS. So when you send a message, it gets percolated through the system until it gets to the CMS. And the CMS is actually multiple systems in data centers all around the world. These are actually in AWS data centers all over the place. I think there's 7 of them now. And they all mirror all of the information amongst themselves. So if a message gets sent up to the Southwest USA CMS, it will get sent out and mirrored on all of the other ones before it tells you that it's been successfully put on the CMS. Okay. So that's part of the reliability factor. Now, if you're sitting where you have internet access, your computer, as it shows on the right side of this diagram, can make a direct telnet connection. They call it telnet. Telnet. We'll talk about that. They call it a telnet connection. It makes this connection directly to a CMS server and delivers the mail into the CMS directly. Okay. If, however, you don't have internet where you're at, you can use some radio protocol, and there are several protocols available to connect to an RMS system, which does have access to the internet. So you're thinking, well, gee, if I'm doing packet radio to an RMS that's on the other end of town, what if the internet's down for my whole town? We'll talk about that in a minute. But you can use HF to connect to an RMS that's 1,000 miles away or 7,000 miles away, right? So it's not, you're not locked into just a local RMS. Protocols between the clients and the RMS are on HF, PACTOR, WinMore, which I don't think is really used anymore. Robust Packet, I also don't think they use that too much anymore. RDOP and VARA. And then on UHF and VHF, Packet and VARA FM is not on this slide, but that's also one that's used. So the RMS systems will be listening on one of these, with one of these, I guess, modulations that they're waiting for. You can make a connection to them. They will make a corresponding connection through the internet to the CMS, and you pass your message to the RMS. It sends it to the CMS. The CMS sends back, okay, I've got it. The RMS sends back to you, okay, I've got it. And you know that it's been delivered to the CMS. Now, excuse me. So the person you're sending the message to then later makes a connection either directly to the CMS or to an RMS that connects to the CMS and can pull down any messages that are waiting for them. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with email systems uh, like Gmail that has a web interface to it, if the internet's down, you have no access to your messages, right? This system, when you pull the message down, it's on your local machine. So even if your radio is turned off, if you've got the message on your machine, you can still look at it. Okay. It's not like you have to make that connection every time you want to see that message. But it also is no longer on the CMS once you've pulled it down. So if you have 3 different computers that you use WinLink on and you pull the message down to one of them, you can't see it on the other 2. Okay. So that's something to consider. All right. So let's see. We kind of talked about the protocols that are available. One thing I did want to say is if you've got an RMS, if you've got a high-speed data network like an Eridan mesh network, which we're going to talk more about later, you can, and you have an RMS on that network, you can make a telnet connection to an RMS without you hitting the internet. So as long as an RMS is available to you by any protocol that you can reach it with, you can get your messages out. Okay. So, and then we kind of went over these protocols as well. I did want to say the WinLink client also supports Iridium Go network. So if you happen to have an Iridium phone and you're paying however many thousands of dollars a month it is for an Iridium phone, you can plug that into your computer and transmit messages directly over that network. WinLink has the capability to do that built in. And also, it has the ability to do peer-to-peer connections. And what that is let's say Sherwood has his client running and I have my client running and I want to send him a file. I can compose a message for peer-to-peer with him and send it directly to him over my VHF radio without going through an RMS or the CMS or anything, right? So that is a capability. And because the system does support non-internet stuff, we're going to talk about that in a second, there is an option to select radio only messaging. And the main reason they have that is so that you can test sending messages without the internet, right? So we'll talk more about that in a second here. All right, so messages get sent. The CMS replicates the data. You can pick up the messages either directly or via RMS. What happens if the RMS doesn't have internet access? In conventional mode, if the RMS loses its internet connection and can't reach the CMS, and you're on a client and you connect to that RMS, it will send you back a message saying, I can't take your message because I have no connectivity. And then you try a different RMS until you find one that can get through. Okay. The other option is to use what they call hybrid mode. Now, in hybrid mode, your RMS that you connect to will use HF to connect to another RMS that does have access to the internet, or it actually joins a network of RMSs that talk to each other. So theoretically, it is possible to not have the CMS involved at all. And in this case, one or more of these RMSs will be running as an MPS, what they call an MPS or message pickup station. And it will actually store the message on the RMS. And so you can come back and pick it up from that RMS later through this hybrid network. There is an ability where you can tell the system up to 3, but they recommend using 2 different RMSs that you want to be your MPS. And the reason for that is for reliability. If one of those happens to be down, chances are good the other one is probably still up. The key thing to remember is if your client downloads it from one MPS, it won't try to download it from the other MPS again. And it will go away from all of the RMS systems, the MPSs, once you've downloaded it once. Okay. Let's see. What else is on here? Yeah, Farmington, they have a hybrid node up there. And that is the only one in Utah right now. So, and obviously we cannot reach that via packet radio from here. I don't think there are sufficient digipeters in the pathway between here and there for us to reach it with packet radio. And VARA is out because you would need an intermediate station there as well. So we are kind of out of luck here in Salt Lake if the internet were to be down. We'll talk more about that at the end. Okay, so if no RMS is available, you can't get to any RMS, you can use this peer-to-peer mode. And that allows you to directly send messages and data back and forth from client to client. This is your last chance, basically, if you're everything is down around you, right? It does require coordination with the receiving station because the operator of the receiving station has to tell their machine to accept incoming connections. So that's something that you want to do. You want to coordinate that on a voice channel, for example. Yes, Stan.
So just to clear the laptops, these are your local.
That's your local radio,
So
correct?
all of your infrastructure, your signal link device, your computer, your HT, all that is connected to another user, again, another HT or a mobile or whatever, and their infrastructure.
Correct. They have to be in a position to receive a connection, right? And normally you're not when you're running a client because you only start your connection when you want to send something or receive something. So that's why you'd have to coordinate it probably over a voice channel first. So I would get on the radio and I would say, hey, Sherwood, put your machine in receive mode. I'm going to send you a Winlink message peer to peer. And then he would say, okay, give me 30 seconds and then I'll be ready for you. I would wait the 30 seconds and then I would send the message. And I could send it over the same frequency, right? I mean, there's nothing that says I have to use a packet radio frequency or any defined frequency. I can send it over whatever frequency I want. It's just that he needs to be ready to receive it.
Something on repeat.
You probably could.
Yeah.
You probably could. Repeater operators would probably get mad at you for doing that, but physically it's possible. The way the packet data is exchanged, it is kind of a bidirectional thing, but it would work. I wouldn't do that unless it was an actual bona fide emergency situation and I had to get a message over to somebody. So, for example, if I was at the park and I had a tent set up with the Red Cross and they needed some kind of supplies and I couldn't get my message to the mayor or whoever the emergency coordinator was, the event manager or whatever you want to call them, any other way, I would do that. I would use a repeater if I had to. But I would not normally do that. Now, when we do our exercise, we may actually test that with our repeater just because we can and it's our repeater. So we'll talk about that. All right. So what equipment do I need to do this? Well, first thing you're going to need is a radio. You're going to need either a VHF, UHF radio or an HF radio, depending on what you want to do, or both. Obviously, if you're a technician class, your HF privileges are quite limited, but you can do this on 10 meters. So we do have the permission to use data on 10 meters as technicians. So that is something that is possible. But mostly we're probably as technicians, we're probably looking at VHF or UHF. You need some kind of an interface. You need something that connects your computer to your radio. Okay. Some radios have a sound card built into them. For example, ICOM 7300 has a sound card built into it. You plug your USB cable from the computer directly into the radio, and you can do everything over that link. You can change the frequency on the radio. You can connect, transmit audio signals, receive audio signals through that same link. So pretty cool. Neil's got a Kenwood handheld, the THD 74, that actually has Bluetooth. Bern's got one also, and you can make a Bluetooth connection between your computer and your radio and actually do Bluetooth audio over that connection, and that'll actually work. That actually works. We had people do that at the Winlink workshop that we did. So pretty slick. If you don't have something like that, you may be able to find an old hardware TNC. Now, a TNC is a terminal node controller. It is a hardware, basically it's a modem, okay? Um, it has a serial port on one end that you connect to your computer, and it has speaker and microphone connection that you connect to your radio, and a PTT connector. And it handles all of the translation between the digital information that comes in out on the serial port and the audio signal that goes out on the radio and comes in from the radio. These things, is anybody still making TNCs? Like real old, Kentronics type TNCs? You've got one? So yeah, they're old, right? These were super popular back in the 80s and 90s when people were doing a lot of packet radio. And they still work. There's nothing wrong with them. They work fine. But nowadays, a lot of people are going with a sound card interface and running the modem in software on their computer. So to do that, they would run like a signal link or a digirig or something like that to physically connect the computer to the radio. And then you run sound modem or Direwolf or something like that on the PC. We'll talk about that in a second. The other option is a Pactor modem. Pactor modems cost a lot. Okay, they're not cheap. I think the cheapest one I've seen on eBay that does Pactor 4 was about $1,800, and that's used. So those are not cheap. But if you want to participate in the RMS hybrid network, that only works on Pactor. So you have to invest in a Pactor modem if you want to play that game. I would not necessarily recommend that you buy a Pactor modem for your client. If you wanted to run an RMS, then sure, buy a Pactor modem if you want to do that. One thing about Pactor, there are 4 levels of Pactor, 1 through 4. Until recently, we could not use Pactor 4 in the US, but they recently changed the signal speed limit, or signal, what was it? The baud rate limit for amateur radio operators was relaxed. And it was set such that you couldn't use Pactor 4 because it was too fast. Yeah. And so Pactor 4 was a technology that was developed. It was used all over the world, except in the United States, because of our regulations. Now, they removed that restriction a couple months ago, I think, January. Yeah, somewhere around there. And so now we can actually use Pactor 4 in the US. And in fact, the Winlink guys say, don't even bother with Pactor 1 anymore. So most of the modems that you will find will do Pactor 1, 2, and 3, or they'll do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they say, don't even mess with Pactor 1. So let's see, you'll need a computer. So a Windows PC or a laptop is ideal because Winlink Express, which is the version of the software that is actually produced and supported by the Winlink team, runs on Windows only. Now, I say it runs on Windows only. I have successfully run it on Linux with Wine, and I've successfully run it on the Mac with Wine as well. But I do not recommend that as a production deployment. I would not want to trust my Wine installation for life, things that depend on it. Go ahead, Dan. You had a comment.
I'm just going to say, with enough wine, really.
True, right? Wine is an application that runs on Linux and the Mac. Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator. And basically what it does is it provides a Windows API that Windows applications can use to run on those other platforms. But like I say, it's not without peril, right? And so I wouldn't want to use it in a situation where life may be in danger. I would rather stick with Windows for that. If you are using a Mac or Linux, there's another application called Pat that works perfectly well and does almost everything that Winlink will do. New features will show up in Winlink first before they get added to Pat, because the Pat guys are not the Winlink guys. So keep that in mind. And then on Android devices, there's a package called WODE, Winlink on Android device, and it also lags behind the actual Winlink software. But and it's really it's a little crufty. Okay, it's a little awkward to work with, but it does work. I have run it successfully, and I've been able to do things with it. So if that's all that you have, if all you have is a tablet, you can do that, and you can get access to WinLink. So don't let the fact that you don't have a laptop stop you from playing with WinLink. Okay. All right. Software wise. So again, if you are,
Question.
yes,
So I mentioned there's also available for iOS.
radio mail, right?
Radio mail.
Yeah.
Device, mobile
Okay. So the comment is there is support for WinLink protocols on iOS. So your iPhone and iPad using an app called Radio Mail. It does not communicate directly to your hardware. You have to use a particular piece of hardware called MobiLink D, which is a KISS TNC that's in a little module. It's about the size of a matchbox. And if you guys remember what matchboxes look like, some of you older guys probably know what I'm talking about. It's about this big, right? And it this doesn't slide up, and it's got a battery in it and everything. So it actually the iOS device will connect to it over Bluetooth, but you have to use so the original MobiLink D and the MobiLink D2 did not support connecting to iOS devices, but the MobiLink D3 and 4 do because they support Bluetooth Low Energy, which is the only Bluetooth profile that the Apple devices have. So that is something to consider if you have an Apple device, an iPhone or an iPad. Macs are a different animal, and you can run Pat directly on a Mac. So you will need some kind of, as I said before, some kind of sound card modem software, unless you're using a TNC, a physical TNC, in which case you don't need that. But if you are using an interface like a SignalLink or a DigiRig or something like that, you'll want some kind of sound modem software. And what this is an application that runs on your machine, and it speaks to an audio device. So it connects to that external device as though it were an audio device. And it has an onboard network port that the WinLink software can connect to and use it as if it was a real TNC. Okay. So it looks like a TNC to the WinLink software, but it looks like just a microphone and speakers to your radio. So there's a couple that I've used, Direwolf and Sound Modem, or you'll hear it called UZ7HO. That's the guy who created it. Either of those will work fine. There's also Vara. Now there's actually 3 versions of Vara. There's Vara HF, or they call it just Vara. There's Vara FM, specifically for UHF and VHF and running on an FM channel with FM modulation. And there's Vara Sat. We don't use Vara Sat here in the US because the particular satellite that it can talk to is in geosynchronous orbit over the other side of the planet. So we can't ever see it from here. So we never use Vara Sat here in the US. There's also RDOP, which actually comes with WinLink Express. There's a version of it called R.C that if you're on a Linux or Mac, you can install that and use it with PAT. So that is a possibility as well. And Pactor, again, is a physical device. So it presents as a USB port on your machine. So you plug it directly into a USB. So you don't need a sound card if you're using Pactor. You'll also need some kind of WinLink software. So you'll use WinLink Express, or sometimes you'll see it called RMS Express. It's the same thing. And that is the one for Windows. And if you've got a Windows machine, I highly recommend you use that. There's PAT, which PAT will run on the Mac, it will run on Linux, and it will run on Windows as well. So if you decide you really like how PAT works and you want to use that on your Windows machine, you can definitely do that. And then WODE, of course, for the Android devices. And I'll add information about radio mail after the presentation. So when I put these slides up online, they will have the information about radio mail. All right, so how do we get an account for WinLink? First thing you got to do is install the software, go through the setup. It'll have you create a username, that'll be your call sign, and put in a password. And there's also a spot in there to put in your password recovery email. Definitely do that. I'm on the WinLink mailing list, and probably 60% of the messages on that mailing list are, I don't have my password. I can't get my password. I can't reset my password. Can somebody help me? And what typically happens is if they included their call sign in their message, somebody will look them up, verify that their name actually matches the call sign and that they're actually who they say they are, and will set their email in the system. And then they'll email them back and say, hey, I said it, try it again. And then they usually, it works. But if you've already set that, then you don't have to bother them when you've forgotten your password. Once you've done that, make a connection to the CMS, either directly or through an RMS. It doesn't matter which one. And once you've done that, then you have an account. Okay. It will validate that your call sign is good. So if your call sign's expired, you won't get an account. So make sure you're not expired before you do this. And if you happen to be happily using WinLink every day, and all of a sudden you find it doesn't work anymore, check that your license didn't expire. Because when your license expires, they will notice and they will turn your account on. Okay. So don't forget to renew your account or your license. Things you can do on the My Account page, you can change your password. You can update your whitelist. We'll talk about whitelist in a minute. You can access your messages via a web-based client. So the messages that are sitting on the CMS, you can actually read those directly over the internet through a web browser. I don't recommend necessarily doing that, but it is possible to do. One thing you will notice while you're setting up your account is if you're using the WinLink client, WinLink Express, there's a spot to put in your registration key. And you might be thinking, do I have to register? Do I have to pay for this? And WinLink is developed by a nonprofit group called ARSFI, or the Amateur Radio Safety Foundation, Inc. And that is their official name. They are a nonprofit. They are 501c3. Did I say that right, Sherwood? They are 501c3. So donations to them are tax deductible. Registrations are not tax deductible. So that is not a donation. It is considered purchasing a license key from them. But those funds help fund the development and the operation of the WinLink system. You do not have to register to run WinLink. Okay. You can run WinLink Express as long as you want, no problem. They will not force you to register in order to use it. But it's only 24 bucks and it's good forever. I don't know. I registered so long ago, I don't remember what it was when I did it. But Yeah. But I looked it up and it's $24 now. So one thing to know is it's not transferable. So you can't like buy it for you and then when you stop using amateur radio because you're in your 90s and you give all your equipment to your nephew, you can't give them your registration key and have it work, right? They'll have to buy a new one. But BARA is separate. Yes, BARA is a separate license and a separate price, and it is more. Yeah, it's like 65 or 70. I don't remember. I haven't looked it up lately, but again, that's a one-time thing, right? Let's see. So you only have to register once, and if you do if you upgrade your license and you get a new license or you switch to a vanity call or something like that, there isn't an automatic way to have it changed, but if you email them, they will happily send you a new registration key for your new license, your new call sign. So you don't have to pay for it again just because you got a different call sign, as long as you're still you. Yes, Al.
What about the SSID?
That doesn't matter. It's only your call sign. Yeah, it's only your call sign that matters. So for those wondering what an SSID is, you can have your call sign hyphen some number, just like you can in Packet. And that is considered a separate account, but it's not separate from you. So as far as the licensing and registration key is concerned, it's just your call sign. More information at the URL that's in the slide there. And again, these slides will all be posted on the club website, so you don't have to scribble this down right away. All of these links will be available online. So don't panic that I've got links in here. Okay, so there are some advanced settings, advanced capabilities in Winlink. Winlink has the ability to send and receive mail from regular internet email addresses. That's pretty darn slick. Now you're thinking, I don't want to get spam on my radio delivered to my machine over Winlink. You can only get messages from the internet if that email address that it's coming from is on your whitelist. So remember, I mentioned you can change the whitelist from the web page. You can also modify your whitelist by sending an email message, a Winlink message, into the system that it's formatted a particular way. I'm not going to go into the details on that right now. Also, any email that you send to from Winlink is automatically added to your whitelist. So if you send a message to somebody, they can reply to you and that will come through. So you don't have to worry about anything fancy with that. And also, if you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to be away from things, and if you need to reach me, use my call sign at winlink.org and put //WL2K in the subject line, then it will automatically whitelist it for that message. Okay. So there is a way for people to email you, but they have to know to do that. And spammers aren't going to do that. They're not that clever. It also supports group addresses. Think of that like a local mailing list alias, right? So I could set up an alias on my client called Mark and add everybody's call sign to that. And then if I send a message to Mark, it will actually send it to all of the addresses in that. I don't have to worry about typing everybody's call sign every time. That's strictly local, right? So if I set up one called Mark and Vern is on the list, he's not going to be able to send it to Mark unless he sets one up as well, okay? There's also a concept of tactical addresses. So think about that as a separate actual mailbox on the Winlink servers with a tactical name. So I could set one up for Murray EOC, for example. And that would be a perfectly valid Winlink email address, murrayeoc@winlink.org. And messages sent to that, as long as they included //WL2K, would be delivered to that mailbox. And anybody who has the username and password for that, the username would be Murray EOC, and the password would be whatever I set it to, could download those messages. Keep in mind, if Dan and I both are using this mailbox and I download the message, he can't get it, right? Because only one download happens. It's not an IMAP server. It's like a POP server, if you guys are familiar with that technology. You also have the ability to integrate your GPS. So the Winlink client software can hook up to your GPS and get your position information and be able to send position reports. And the Winlink client has the ability to actually map responded emails that have those positions in them. So if you send a message out to your group and say, hey, everybody, send me a position report where you're at, and they all do that, you can actually pop that up on a map directly from the Winlink client and see where everybody's at on the map. Pretty slick. It also supports the idea of precedence for messages. So if you are familiar with emergency services communications, there are levels of precedence, right? From routine all the way up to emergency or flash, right? So in Winlink, they support 4 levels: flash, immediate, priority, and routine. The default is routine. Any flash messages are handled first by the RMS and the CMS. Any intermediates are handled next, any priorities are handled next, and the routines are handled last. So if you've got an emergency, you definitely need to get that message through. You can send it with a higher priority. And the way you do that is you include / WL2K space and then the code letter, either Z, O, P, or R, in the subject line. And there's an example that says this is a flash, the EOC is flooding. That would be pretty urgent to get that message out, because possibly bridges. If it was something like, we need water at the park, that might be a priority message. It might not be a flash or immediate message, right? Nobody's going to die if I don't get water right now, but I definitely need that message to get through, and I need to get the water at some point, right? So it's pretty quick. Yeah. It's just, it will actually take this precedence into account. So if there's a lot of traffic in the system, then this can make a difference in getting your message through faster. All right, so forms are the killer app for Winlink. There are a bunch of standard templates. I listed them here. I'm not going to stand here and read them all off. You can read the list as well as I can. The mainly important ones are like the ICS forms, the FEMA forms. Weather are some useful forms under weather. And then the general forms are things like a Winlink check-in and stuff like that. So we're actually going to, in the demo phase of this, we'll actually do some form stuff. The standard templates come with Winlink. They automatically update. They come with PAT as well, and PAT will automatically update them as well. When new versions of the forms are available, it'll automatically say, hey, there's a new version of the forms. Let's install it now, and you can say yes or no. WODE, I don't know if it automatically updates the forms or not. You may have to wait for a new version of WODE to get the new forms, but it does support forms. And I don't know anything about radio mail. I've never used it. So there's also general forms. There are a bunch of them available. They're not normally installed on a Winlink installation, but you can download them and install them. Things like SOTA and POTA activation. There's a particular way you can do a call sign database query. There's a little form that you fill out the thing that you want, and you send it to this particular address, and it will send you back a response with the call sign lookup for that call sign. There's a bunch of these different kind of general forms. You only have them if you've downloaded them and installed them yourself. They don't normally come with the software. And of course, you can make up your own forms. So if you have something that you're doing, like you want to do a poll or something like that, you can create your own form and send that out to people and say, hey, install this, and then fill out the form and send me the response, right? And they can do that. The forms are standard HTML. So if you've ever written a form in HTML, it's pretty easy. If you've never written one in HTML, it's less easy, but it's not that hard, really. The forms are pretty efficient because the form will look on the screen just like the actual physical piece of paper, but all of that, all the lines and all of that doesn't get sent. Only the keywords and values for each field actually get sent as part of the message. So it's very efficient. The message will say, use this particular form. These are the key value pairs. And when they receive the message, it'll pop up and look just like the filled out form on their end. But again, you did not like take a photograph of the form and send that, or send a PDF of the form, which would be much larger than you want it to be, right? So it's very efficient to send these. They can also include special keywords and tokens to automatically populate certain fields. So like a time and date can be pre-populated for you. You can always go in and change it in the form, but you can have it automatically fill it in based on the current time, date, your location, things like that. Let's see. What else? Okay. Things about Winlink to keep in mind. If you get a Winlink account and you don't ever use it, it'll go away. They expire Winlink accounts after 400 days of inactivity. Okay. So if it's been more than 400 days since you created your Winlink account and you haven't used it, you're going to have to create a new one. And any messages that you had are gone. Okay. So keep that in mind. But again, it doesn't cost you anything to create a new account. So you can just create another account. It's very easy to do. Change your call sign, create a new account with your new call sign, and then delete the old one, or just let it expire. If it doesn't let you create your account, check that your license hasn't expired. Check that you didn't type it wrong. Those are things that could happen, right? They will validate that your license is real. Okay. So, demo time. What I want to do here is, let me see if I can actually do this. So I'm going to, what? What? Okay. Before we actually do the demo, I'm going to go ahead and finish the presentation. And then rather than try to do the demo and try to get people set up and stuff and then come back to it, we'll go ahead and finish this for now. And then we'll dig into what we can do with our machines. Okay. So some ideas for using and learning Winlink. Once you have your account, you want to use it. You want to do some experimentation. You want to try it out. There's a number of Winlink exercises out there that you can participate in. The ETO does Winlink Thursdays. They used to do it every Thursday. Now I think they do it once a month. And they also do a semi-annual big exercise. A lot of times their exercises will be in two parts, where one part is for normal Winlink use and the other part is for peer-to-peer, usually over HF. And they'll have specific machines set up that are listening for inbound peer-to-peer connections during that period of time that the exercise is running. But there's other exercises you can do. There's a Winlink Wednesday exercise. The Iowa Winlink group has a Saturday and a Monday exercise. Some of these exercises won't count your participation unless you're using an RF connection mechanism. Others don't care. So read the text of the exercise before you participate if you're going to be doing it over a telnet connection, right? But yeah, there's tons of these little exercises out there, and you can Google for Winlink exercise and find probably a bunch more. These are just the ones that popped up when I did a quick search. Yeah, Dan.
I know some of these exercises, it's pretty cool because they'll live stream it, and they will pop up your station as you're sending messages and stuff, so it looks pretty sophisticated, but very easy to do.
Yeah. And these are things that some of these exercises will teach you stuff, more advanced topics in Winlink. For example, the Winlink Thursday group, they were doing some that were like you're going to create a form, a custom form. Do it like this. Now put that form here and then do this and then fill the form out and then send it. And so now you've learned how to create your own custom form and use it to send a message, right? So it's not, some of these are really involved. They can be really quite involved. Some of them are just, hey, check in, send a Winlink check-in report. And that's all they care about. You did it. You were successfully able to send a message in Winlink. And that's fine. That's, that's perfectly fine. That's a good exercise because it makes sure A, your computer works, B, your Winlink software is up to date, C, your radio works, D, the RMS that you're trying to connect to works, and you were able to successfully send a message, right? So all good activities to do. I've done a number of these. I don't do them regularly. I probably should, but it hasn't been, a super high priority. The Winlink Thursdays are kind of tough because we have our meetings on Thursday, and so I'm usually involved in planning or getting the presentation finalized and things like that before the meeting. But I want to start doing more of this kind of stuff so that I'm up to date and current on my Winlink usage. So what's next? You've got a Winlink account. Well, you don't yet, but you're going to have them. Use it. Send some messages. Send messages to each other. Okay, pick somebody. Send them a message. Send me a message. I'll respond to it. Play around with some forms. Look at the options. See what you can do. Next month, we're going to try to get people working with radios. Today, we're mainly just trying to get accounts set up. Make sure you can do a telnet connection in if you brought your computer. Who brought a computer that they want to do Winlink on? So 3, 4 people, 5. Okay, well, we should be able to do that. Next month, don't just bring your computer, bring your radios and signal links, digirigs, whatever. Geez, Al, you're a popular guy. Yeah, bring your radios, bring your connection hardware, that kind of stuff, whatever, and we'll figure out how to get your radio stuff working. So that's what we'll be doing next month on the second Thursday. What do you need to bring next month? Bring your computer, laptop, or device. Again, if you didn't bring one tonight, but you have one that you want to bring it next month. We'll at least get you going. So if you don't have a radio and all the equipment and stuff, bring what you have. We'll get something going with you. We'll figure something out. Bring a radio if you've got one. I'll have a radio. We'll be meeting over at 81. So I'll have a radio. I'll put an antenna out on the pole outside so we can actually hook your computer up to my radio if you didn't bring one of your own. If you want to plug your radio into my antenna, we can do that. We can do some experimentation there. Some Kenwood radios have a built-in TNC. You can use it per packet without having a separate interface or a sound card modem or anything like that. I've got a radio that'll do that. I'll bring that along too. We can play with that too. If you don't have a radio that has that, bring your interface device. Get an interface device. Links to Tigertronics for the Signal Link and DigiRig are here. I have a Signal Link. When my first introduction to Winlink was from the North Los Angeles group, and they highly recommended the Signal Link. I don't think DigiRigs were available then, but having seen Jeff's DigiRig, I wish I'd got a DigiRig instead, because that thing is pretty darn slick. It's like this big. Did you bring it, Jeff? So that's a DigiRig, and it's sweet. It's really nice, and it's cheaper than the Signal Link too. It's like half as much. So DigiRig's about $60. Yeah, Signal Link is about 130, I think, with a set of cables. I think you have to buy the cables separately with the DigiRig, but even at that, the cables are maybe $20. So
West Valley was at one time making TNCs.
they made a TNC board that fits on top of a Raspberry Pi. I know Dan's got one. If you want to bring it, that would be awesome to show up. I've got one. I haven't actually put it on a Raspberry Pi yet. I just haven't had time. But I think Matt was selling those through Etsy, and I don't know if he still is or not. At one point, he was having trouble getting parts, and so they were hard to come by. But I think that problem got resolved. I don't know if he's still making them or not. But that is an option as well if you want to do packet. Um, okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about on the presentation is Mark's future plans for Winlink. So we are currently working on a grant proposal for ARDC, that's the Amateur Radio Digital Communications Group. Part two of that proposal is to set up a Winlink hybrid RMS at our tower location. That would include radios, antennas, a Pactor modem, and whatever else is necessary to make that thing work. So if we get funded, we'll be doing that. If we don't get funded, we probably won't be doing that because we don't have any money. But yeah, if we do get funded, we will do it. But we can still talk about it, right? And if we know anybody with deep pockets that wants to pay for it, I won't complain. But and then part three of the proposal is to set up a Winlink client system here in the radio room, tie it in with packet VHF, possibly HF as well. I don't know. We have to figure out what we want to do with that. We won't likely put a Pactor modem here because, again, a Pactor modem for a client station is probably overkill. But if our proposal gets funded, there's a lot of things we plan to do. Two of the things we plan to do are Winlink related. So there will be much rejoicing if we get a hybrid Winlink node here in the Salt Lake Valley. And if it happens to be Mark's hybrid RMS, I think that would be cool. So, all right. That's the end of the presentation. So anybody have any questions or comments? Yes. Vern, you want to go first? Or what was your name? David.
My comments were short, I just thought that's those forms that requires $25 a month.
Oh, yikes.
Possibly $25 a year.
And that sounds like an iPhone app. Yeah. Okay. Vern, go ahead.
Any thoughts on how we're-
I don't. I don't have any good answers for that. You can export messages from WinLink. And in PAT, they are just files. Messages are just files. So you could, if you have like two PAT installations, you could easily move a file from one place to another. There's no index or anything like that. And if you're using WinLink Express, you can export a message from one machine and import it on another machine and have it in both places. But those are the only solutions that I know of. And I don't believe they're cross compatible. So I don't think an export from WinLink can be dropped into a PAT data file and vice versa.
So you might get loud. Trouble most of the time is when you're receiving a message, have that message sent to like a pop server or some other server where it have filters, and if you get a particular message coming in, then it'll automatically send out to your other machine. I'm going to be thinking about doing that using my Gmail. Every message that I do also include my Gmail address, and that will automatically send it to. So it doesn't matter which one I'm on. It'll resend that same message to the Gmail server again. So at least I'll have it on the other laptop.
So the idea there is in the to field, you would have people put both your WinLink call sign and your Gmail address.
Yeah.
And so it would get sent to both of those places. There,
Crude way of doing it, but
there is a facility in WinLink to say forward all of my Winlink messages to a public email address, like a regular email address. But I think if you do that,
You lose
you
it.
don't get them on Winlink,
Yeah.
right? So that's something to consider.
Started.
From Winlink Express, you would want to export it into a file and then import that file. In PAT, yes, you could, because each message is in a separate physical file in the message store directory. So you could conceivably just copy that file to another PAT instance. But I don't know if those are compatible or not. I don't have an answer for that. And I'm not set up to test that right now, but I could test that sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we'll keep that in mind as something to figure out over the next couple of weeks here. And exactly. And if you're working with a tactical address, it becomes even more important because you may have more than one person responding to that tactical email or that tactical address, right? So that could be something that is a factor. All right. So anybody on the Zoom? We have a couple of people on the Zoom. Anybody there have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and terminate the recording at this point, if I can figure it out. Okay, here we go.